This may be a very helpful test for you. If you see a philosophy, if you see a religion, if you see a movement out there, ask yourself, does it fall into ethical monotheism umbrella, under ethical monotheism umbrella, which is what Judaism introduced to this planet? What does it mean? First of all, monotheism, I hope you all know what that means, right? We're supposed to teach the baby the first word is not mama, is not baba, it should be Shema. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. I'm assuming all of you know this by heart. That's the last words that we're supposed to say when we leave this world. Shema Israel. What's so special about Shema Israel? What's so special? What are we saying?
God is one.
There's only one God, Jews. Now what's so special about one God? I may have two. I may have five. The Greeks had 200. What's the big deal? What is the big deal? Quickly, come on. What's so special? I'm supposed to teach my baby the first word. There is only one God. Why? What's so bad about five? Who wants to speak up? If you don't understand the answer to this question, why are you Jewish?
There would be a problem.
Hold on. There would be a problem? What problem? If I have two gods, what's the problem?
Five different ideas.
You don't know right
You don't know right
from wrong.
from wrong. The problem with more than one God is that you will not know the difference between right and wrong. There will be different standards of morality. Joe, you want to add something?
Yes, because first of all, in the Torah, when we see the Torah, it says in our commandments, thou shalt have no other God before me.
Yeah, we understand that. But the point is, what's the problem with two gods? That's the problem. You will not know the concept of morality. How do I know? If the one God tells me, go kill, the other one says, I am the God of fertility. You have to sacrifice babies. And the other one is the God of love. All you need is love. I don't know who to follow. So this is one problem. What if there is no God? So we have a problem if there is more than one God.
No law.
What if there is no God? I'm an atheist. There are atheist philosophies. There are many Jews who today say, I don't believe in God. Which, by the way, we have to be careful. There is a big difference between atheism and what's the other one that I'm talking about? What? Agnosticism is different from atheism. What's the difference? Who is an atheist? What's the definition? I know that there is no God. What is agnosticism? I am not sure if there is or there is no God. There is a big difference. And again, the last few weeks, we've been talking about the fact that our society has gone to a situation where there is either left or right and nothing in between. There is a lot of space in between, ladies and gentlemen. There is a space between pro-choice and pro-life. It's not, if you're pro-choice, you're against life. If you're pro-life, you're against pro-choice. There is a lot of in-between. Just because you don't like the deal with Iran does not mean that you're a warmonger, we need to start a war. There is a lot of in-between. Just because you don't like Donald Trump does not mean that he has nothing, it's not, life is not black and white. And that Judaism is famous for that. I always said this for many years. If you're confused about any issue in life, ask yourself, what's the one extreme? What's the other extreme? Judaism most probably is in the middle somewhere. Judaism does not like normative Judaism. Of course, there are extremists in Judaism like in every other religion. Just because you, where's Bert? He says it very bluntly. He says, not, how does it go? Not all, how does it go? Not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. Now, is he Islamophobic? If you say anything about terrible about the religion of Islam, no, he's stating the fact that the vast majority of terrorism is happening by people at this time. At this time, that's true. There was a time when Islam was in a different stage. But what we're saying is, people who are scared to say it's Islamic fundamentalism or Islamic radicalism or Islamic jihadists, they're nervous, and I gave a whole lecture the other night. They're nervous because the word there is Islamic, people will become Islamophobic, right? This does not mean that you hate Islam, but the fact is that the majority of people who are walking around with a knife, they say Allahu Akbar, so they don't say Jesus loves you. It used to be Christians used to walk around with a knife saying Jesus loves you, and they used to kill us, right? So right now, people use Islam. Whether it's real Islam, whether it's radical Islam, that's a separate issue. I'm not going to get into this, I'm not an expert on Islam. But it does upset me when people who are not experts on Islam stand up and publicly say, it has nothing to do with Islam. Who says so? Who are you to say that it has nothing to do with Islam? They call themselves Islamic State. What about Iran? They call itself the Islamic Republic of Iran. Has nothing to do with Iran? So Ayatollah knows less about Islam than you do? We have to be humble. So anyway, basically what I'm trying to say is we've been talking about the fact that there is a lot of gray area in between the extremes. And we have to be aware of that. Anyway, so monotheism. So we dealt with the difference of atheism and agnosticism. Big difference. Big difference. In the Soviet Union, they trained me, they taught me, there is no God, only sick people believe in God. That's what Karl Marx said. Religion is an opiate of the people. So it's a drug. You must be on drugs if you believe in God. That's what communism teaches. So that's atheism. But agnosticism, it's in between. In fact, I would go one step further, maybe it sounds radical, but I would say Judaism wants us to be agnostics. A person who said, I know there is a God, I know what? That's all a bit dangerous. They sound like fanatics. How do you know? How do you know? A little bit of doubt is not a bad idea. And that's what the book that we're going to talk about now, or at least an area, an issue that I want to discuss. So, but before that, I want to conclude with ethical. Monotheism is not enough. Just because there is one God, it is not enough. What's ethical monotheism? There is one God, and the most important thing to that God is ethics. Which means how I treat you. God does not give a damn about how many times you pray to Him. The most important thing to Him is how do you treat other human beings? Are you fair to other human beings? That's ethical. So God decides what's right and what's wrong. If there is no God, so we didn't finish that one. So if there are two gods, I'm confused. If there is no God, that's a tough issue. And I brought to you one of my favorite lines in world literature. Brothers Karamazov. This is Dostoevsky. Whether you read that book or not, it is probably one of the greatest books ever written. I strongly recommend this book, but it doesn't matter. The fact is, because he deals with everything. Dostoevsky is probably the most profound writer. But the fact is that he has one line that will clarify most of the issues in life. He says, when there is no God, or where there is no God, all is permitted. All is permitted. Now, again, I want to be careful. Somebody will walk away and say, the rabbi said that if I don't believe in God, I'm evil. I did not say that. There are beautiful atheist people. There are beautiful people who are atheists. But even the most famous atheists agree with that statement. What was the British famous one who died last year? No, not Russell. Last year he died. Who died last year? The British guy. Very angry, very brilliant. You know, will come to me. What?
Christopher
Hitchens.
What's his name?
Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens. Look him up. Look him up. He was probably the most eloquent. I know that Hawkins is also considered one of the famous, but Hitchens was brilliant. He was sharp. He was tough. He challenged, any religion, any faith, and so on. But even he twice debated in Los Angeles. Once he debated Rabbi David Wolpe, and once he debated my close friend Dennis Prager. And in both cases, you look it up, it's on YouTube. In both cases, he admitted that if there is no God, if there is nothing above you and me, then morality, ethics, becomes an issue of personal opinion. Who are you? And this is what Roger brought it up last week. Who are we to say that America or Western civilization is better than Islamic philosophy right now, Islamist philosophy right now? Who are we? It becomes personal opinion. If there is no one God who is above Russia, above China, above America, above White House, above Supreme Court, above Allah, Allah is God. If there is no one source of morality, then it becomes you like I don't know, to cut people's heads, and you like to build hospitals. It's kind of like somebody put it. You like ice cream. You like vanilla, and I like chocolate. If you understand that, and this is a good time to challenge this line. Because if you're struggling with that, then we will have problems. Then why do we need ethical monotheism? Questions, comments?
There are many religions in the world, and all the different religions, they each have one God, but these one gods are very different from each other.
Okay, so it's true. It's true. But we have to go back to the beginning. Judaism was the first ethical monotheistic religion. And the second was Christianity. So that's why what we call today is Judeo-Christian philosophy, or Judeo-Christian civilization, Judeo-Christian society, Judeo-Christian values. So it's true that Islam is monotheistic. No question about this. More monotheistic than Christianity. Because Christianity, there is an issue of Trinity. Is Jesus God? Is Jesus the Son of God? The Spirit, the Holy Spirit? We have a little bit of a problem. Yes, sir.
All religions in the world, excuse me, Rabbi, don't they all have ethics? They all have ethics. They all come down to an ethical solution of the Torah. Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt do that.
That's not true.
They have
That's not true. There are many religions that don't. In fact, Hinduism does not even have God. Hinduism does not have a God. So Hinduism does not even believe in monotheism. Forget about morality. Morality, each religion may have different gods, different religions, different moralities, and so on. But that's the point that I was trying to show you. We are a revolution. We came to this planet and we said, no, there is only way to create a nice human society, humane society, and that needs both of these. Christianity accepted it. Now you can say, but Christianity did horrible things. Yes. Jews also do some horrible things. And atheists have done some wonderful things. Again, be careful. We're talking about the bigger picture. Without those two going together, we cannot have morality. Questions?
Within a given society, you have a definition of ethical non-atheism. But it changes geographically, and it changes over time. If you look at any, even Judaism, look at 5,000 years ago and what we mostly mainstream Judaism believes.
Correct. This is a good point.
It's going to change.
That's why I think I brought it up also last week, that if you think that Judaism is the Torah, you will be always wrong. Judaism is not the Torah. Well, let's put it the other way around. The Torah is not all of Judaism. What do you need in order to understand Judaism? Because the Torah says if you suspect that your wife slept with another man, what do you do according to the Torah? No, you don't shoot. No. It's much worse. It's much worse. It's called Sota. Do you remember Sota? Many of you read the book. It became a bestseller, international bestseller. Remember Sota? It's in the Torah. You remember that one? It became an international bestseller. According to the Torah, you have to bring your wife to the Kohen, to the priest in town, and gather the entire village, and then she goes through a horrible ritual. She drinks some disgusting bitter waters, and if nothing happens to her body, everything is wonderful. You take her home, and they live happily ever after. If she doesn't throw up, it's something worse actually. She has some kind of a miscarriage, something happens to her thighs, we don't quite understand what it is, then she's guilty, then the entire village has to stone her. It's no trial. This is the trial. This is the trial. So it's a test. So that's according to the Torah. If you read the Torah, you will say Judaism is a sadistic, cruel religion. So what do you need according to the Torah? It's what we call the oral Torah, or rabbinic Judaism. Please understand, in the year 70 of Common Era, the temple was destroyed, Jerusalem burned down to ashes, and you and I ended up in chain, and we were taken into slavery to Europe. At that point, a lot of things have changed. The Kohanim, it used to be known what you do as a Jew. A few times a year you bring your goat to Jerusalem, you give it to the Kohen, there is a sacrifice, and so on and so forth. So suddenly now we don't have the temple, we don't have sacrifices, the Kohanim lost their job. What do? How do you live as a Jew? So a major revolution takes place in the year 70, and this is what we call the oral Torah becomes written Torah. So it begins with Mishnah, and then Midrash. Tevis likes always to stop and say, Rabbi, is it in the Torah or is it in the Midrash? So whenever there is a blank, whenever there is vacuum, the rabbis come in and try to explain to us. Why did Abram say that she's his sister? Is it a nice thing to do? What happened to Sarah when she was in the harem of the Pharaoh? Did something happen there or not? All these things. Why did he cry, Jacob, when he kissed Rachel for the first time? How come Joseph was able at the age of 17 to say no to Mrs. Potiphar, who was beautiful and wealthy and powerful and could give him freedom? How could he say no? The rabbis come in and help us with Midrash. So we have Mishnah, Midrash, Talmud, and that is not the end. Because then there is Rashi, who tries to give you commentary on the Talmud and so on. Without the rabbinic Judaism, you cannot understand Judaism. So that's the problem. A lot of people say Christianity has gone through that transition, Protestantism and commentaries. Many things have changed. You heard what happened 2 weeks ago. The Pope stood up and issued another statement that from now on Catholics should never even try to convert the Jews and so on. That's different. That's different. Second Vatican Council in 1964-65 said, Jews from now on will not be responsible for the murder, for the suffering of Jesus. For 2,000 years they said we are guilty. That's where all the... Pardon me?
The Gemara.
Gemara is part of the Talmud. So the Talmud is Mishnah, together with the Gemara, it becomes Talmud. But even that is not over. There are commentaries upon commentaries. And so that's what a lot of people say, that Islam needs a revolution or reformation. Reform Islam. And by the way, there was a big article in the Wall Street Journal on Saturday saying that there are 5 major theologians within Islam who are really taking chances for their lives. And they are writing powerful essays and books trying to, Islam needs to change, to reform. That would be the solution. Because ISIS did not start 2 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. Don't buy that. All studies have shown, I went to a lecture that Marilyn invited me to, and they told us it started in the 19th century. They're building this up, this philosophy. The glory of Islam. We will take over the world. We need to go back to what we used to be. That began in the end of 19th century. And then they used the vacuum and jumped in. Comments, questions? Yes, sir.
Didn't the Jews have one God, and then Christianity came along, and it got a little more confusing, your words, the Holy Ghost, Mary, Jesus, but didn't the Christians do a far better job than the Jews in teaching their people that there was a life after death, and giving people a sense of hope, where the Jewish religion, as I understand it, teaches dust to dust, and it's over.
Okay, this is a very important question that will come up in the next 2 sessions, because I want us to deal with the toughest issue that I brought up last week, and we'll start today, called theodicy. Theodicy is a very important part of theology, which basically asks a very simple question. If God is wonderful, if God loves us, if God knows everything, and if God is omnipotent, which means He can do anything He wants, why is there evil in the world? So, Christianity, you are right. The Torah does not talk about Olam Haba. That's in Rabbinic Judaism. That's an interesting point. Look at this, total revolution. The Torah never mentions that one day, God does not say to Abram, one day when you die, everything will be, there will be a reward and punishment. No. It's this life, this life, this life. Judaism was obsessed with this life. Christianity goes to the other extreme perhaps, at least in the beginning. Don't worry about it. You're poor, you're suffering, don't worry about this. One day you will go to the right place. You will go to paradise. Just pray and so on. Just accept Jesus in your heart. Even if you read today, if you watch on Sunday morning, sometimes the preachers are confusing people. They're talking about one day everything will be wonderful. So, Christianity did a good job not only in that, Stuart. Let's be honest about this. What did the major change that Christianity said to Roman Empire? This was the first Christians were Jews, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus was Jewish, Paul was Jewish, Matthew was Jewish, John was Jewish. They were all Jews. They were rabbis. How did they convert Roman Empire? What did they do that we did not do? What's the major change that Christianity introduced? Forget about Jesus. What's the, what?
Resurrection.
What else?
Conversion.
What?
Conversion.
Okay, what else? That's true. That's true. They became aggressive. They went out there and said, come on, join us. We never did this. Yes?
It's a political movement because they had to appeal to the pagans.
And how did they? What did they do that Judaism does not do?
They changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday.
That's not important. It's a big deal. I switch. What else?
They gave them a symbol.
What else?
The cross.
I will give you a hint. Yes.
They stopped the circumcision.
That's it.
What? They stopped circumcision.
No bris. Hey, Roman soldier, you want to become one of us? Come on. No operation necessary. Are you kidding? This is a major barrier, ladies and gentlemen. Until today, how come I've done 80% of the conversions that I have officiated at are women and not men? How come? It's much tougher for a man to convert. You have to do a serious operation. So they made that big change. What's the second change? So sex is one big issue in life. What's the second big issue in life? Food! Eat whatever you want. I love shrimp. I like crab, right? Go for it. Lobster, whatever you want. This is a major change. Yes, John.
But Rabbi, Jesus himself was against the fact that there and wanted conversion. It was only after his death did Paul say that we accept Paul because he.
Okay, that's not the point. I want to focus. I don't want us to go on tangents. We just dealt with one question. How come Christianity did a better job? And there are many more Christians today in the world than Jews. It was much easier to become a Christian than a Jew. It's PR. It's so easy. It's much easier to sell it. Yes.
Jews require that you commit yourself to certain laws.
Correct. So they dropped it.
Just laws.
Correct. Well, the main ones were those two. Of course, there are others. The Sabbath, by the way, we have to be careful. Sunday, today, obviously, very few people observe it. But Sunday used to be observed. Many of you probably remember, especially if you grew up in the South. I understand that until today, there are a couple of states and many counties where you cannot go to a supermarket on Sunday. So please don't poo-poo what they did. So they tried to switch to Sunday, but keep it still observance and spiritual, go to church. And by the way, in the traditional Christian communities, you go to a little town in Oklahoma somewhere or in Idaho, on Sunday morning, nobody is watching the movies. Everybody's in church. Church is still Sunday morning is for the church.
If you go west to Palm Beach, you'll see that.
That's right. So church, so that's the point. So Christianity did a good job not only about life after you die, but also it's easier. Like you said, it's love. Love. Jesus loves you and so on. I want us to continue in a minute to any other issues. Shirley, what?
No, I was going to talk. I think the afterlife was important.
You think the afterlife was a major issue?
Also forgiveness.
Forgiveness is in Judaism also. What else?
The next thing is, you don't have to be responsible for your actions.
In a way. I mean, think about Catholicism. Until 1600, basically, it was Catholicism, right? There was no Methodists and Presbyterians and so on. How do you deal with a crime, with a sin? You hurt your brother. You cheated on your husband. What do? You go for confession, and whatever that local priest says to you, you don't need to go all the way to Rome. Whatever that guy, 22-year-old priest, tells you to do, done. You're clean. Yes, sir.
Don't you consider my missionaries, I don't speak to you, you Jewish.
Okay, Chabad. The question is about Chabad today. Let me make it very clear about Chabad. Chabad is much more aggressive than we ever were in terms of, come on, you're Jewish, come on, get. But number one, they do not like conversions. They don't believe in conversions. The founding book of Chabad, Tanya, has a strange line there that is uncomfortable for me even to say. But basically there is a hint that there is something unique about Jewish soul, and unless you're born with it, you cannot really gain it. That's unique. It's one line in that particular book. It's never in the Torah. It's never in the Talmud. We always welcomed converts. We made it difficult to become a Jew. Yes, it's not just the circumcision. Somebody has to knock on my doors how many times?
3 times.
3 times. So if somebody leaves a message, Rabbi, I'm interested in conversion, what do I do? At least theoretically, I don't respond. If they give up, they're not serious. So having said that, I do want to say that Judaism used to be aggressive. We used to go out there and say, come on, join us. We stopped because it was forbidden to us by the Romans. The Romans said, if you proselytize, we will kill you. Don't teach Torah, don't proselytize, and so on. Anyway, I don't want to get into on a tangent. Ethical monotheism. Christianity is into ethical monotheism. 2 more questions, comments.
What I was going to ask is, you mentioned that in atheistic type society, there are no ethics per se. It's not a rationale there.
No. You know what they say? There are no atheists in foxholes, right? There is nobody on this planet who is an atheist, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be fooled. When in atheistic societies, there is God, but it's not Shema Yisrael. Who was God in my society? Those of you who were at my bar mitzvah, I gave you a speech about that. I prayed every morning to Lenin. Lenin was, Lenin is, Lenin will be forever. Vehu haya, vehu hover, vehu yeh, v'tifara Adon Olam Hashem. They stole a line from our Siddur. They made one change. Instead of saying God was, God is, they said Lenin was, Lenin is. And you remember I told you what I was taught. Grandpa Lenin loves you very much. And therefore tell us tomorrow morning what your parents are talking about around the table tonight. Okay? So that's what atheism is about. There is no vacuum. Ladies and gentlemen, physics 101. There is no vacuum. In philosophy, in politics, in ISIS, in America, when there is vacuum, immediately something else will come in. So if there is no God, something else becomes God. Who is God in America today? Take your pick. What comes up to your mind? Money? What else? It's not just money. What else? Power? What else? I would say there is one more. What? Fame. Fame. Why are we so obsessed with famous people? One of the reasons that Donald Trump is so successful is that he's famous. People say he is using his brilliant concepts about marketing. You know, you see Trump on every building around the world. He didn't call it MCI or whatever. There are people who are much wealthier than Trump.
He doesn't have to use any of his money, they said, because he gets
Right
all
now
his
he doesn't.
free news.
But there is an interesting article. There was an article this week that says, just wait and see. The moment he needs to start using his money, things are going to change dramatically. Number one, he is not as wealthy as he claims to be. Number two, most of his money is in real estate. He's not liquid. Do you think Trump suddenly is going to sell half of his hotels to run for office? No way. Things are going to change the moment it becomes a national campaign. Anyway, so fame is also another god in America. And I would say one of the reasons that there are all these disgusting shows where people, I cannot even comprehend that people are actually watching those shows. That a mother shows up and says, my daughter slept with my boyfriend and he slept with my sister afterwards, and they're talking and interviewing, and how do you feel about this? And they say, ladies and gentlemen, I have a surprise for you. He's coming in now. And then this one stands up with her. And somebody told me that they have those chairs just in case they're going to throw at each other. Right? You know, Carl's daughter-in-law worked for David Letterman for what, 20 years or something? Yeah, ask her. She knows what's behind the scenes, what's happening there. She was choosing all the guests on his show. Anyway, so there are bodyguards, whatever they're called, behind the scenes over there. They are ready. When they throw at each other chairs, they jump in and stop it. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows it's a setup. And people are watching. Why would you go on national television and humiliate yourself and your children? The whole nation is watching because that's fame. I'm famous for 2 minutes. 15, that's the famous line. Everybody gets the 15 minutes of fame. Yes, sir.
Rabbi, the Romans and the Greeks had the same thing with their gladiators.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly the same thing. They
That's
were
true.
feeding into people's
Circus and
personality.
bread and circus. Okay, so I want to kind of conclude this one of these ethical. Of course, we'll come back to this. Oh, I'm sorry, Gail.
We're not the Sota.
Sota.
Maybe written, but the rabbis never let it occur.
That's the point. I never finished the point. According to the Torah, this is what you do to your wife if you suspect her. Or last week we spoke about an eye for an eye. People read the Bible, the Christians. They never heard about Mishnah or the Talmud. They said, what? Look at Jews. They're so disgusting and so cruel. It means that I have to grab your eye and so on and so forth.
What do you do to your husband?
So, you asked this question last year. You don't remember the answer? I did. According to the Torah, what do you do to your husband if you suspect that he slept with another woman? What? No.
You stop having headaches.
That's not in the Torah. That's not in the Torah. By the way, Tavis, I'm glad that you're here because you missed that session when we spoke about the headaches. Ecclesiastes and Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot especially makes it very clear. Who gets headaches according to, if you really understand psychology? It's the man, not the women. It's a big lie. And today every sex expert will tell you it's the men who don't want to have intimacy with their wives. Anyway, so back to Betty Sue's question. What do you do to your husband according to the Bible, to the Torah? If you're suspicious that he had relations with your neighbor, woman, what do you say? Come on. What do you do? What about Abraham? Didn't he sleep with another woman? What about Jacob? Didn't he have 4 different wives? He marries her. It's a marriage. If you have sex with and 2 people, 2 witnesses know about this, it's a lie. We were allowed to have many wives according to the Torah. So to answer your question, what do you do to your husband? Nothing. You welcome her home. Except again, this is a perfect example that we did not get stuck there. What happened? How come today we don't have 2 wives? What? Who is they? What government? They didn't care about the government. It has nothing to do with government. Christianity changed it, but we continued. Anybody knows? Until when?
1500s.
No. No. It happened in 1100. It's in 1100, Rabbi Gershon, a Spanish major figure, looked around and he said, "Sepasnisht." At that point, Christianity took over Muslims. Among Muslims, we were okay because Islam allows 4 wives. So we had 4, maybe 5, maybe 2. They had a few. In the 11th century, they looked around. Christianity was in charge. Christians had only 1 wife. And they made fun of us. They said, look at the Jews, primitive. So Rabbeinu Gershom stands up in Spain and says, takana. Takana means a correction. I'm not changing the law, I'm just adding, what is it called? Amendment. Amendment to the law. It's called takana of the Rabbeinu Gershom. In 1000 approximately, right? Of Common Era. So it's 1,000 years ago. says from now on, only one wife. Now, he's in Europe. He's in Europe. So, there were Jews in Israel, in Iran, in Iraq, in Morocco. Jews by that time spread around. Remember, we've been in Europe now for 1,000 years. So European Jews accepted it and said, okay, Rabbeinu Gershom said so, from now on, only one wife. All the rabbis agreed with him. However, the other Jews, especially, you're right, in one country, which is far away from Europe, Spain is somewhere here, right? Mediterranean is here, Africa is here, Yemen is over here. Those Jews ended up there after the first destruction of the temple, which was 586, right? BCE. 6th century and 1000. For 1600 years they lived in Yemen, and they say Rabbeinu who? Never heard about it. And they continued to have many wives. All the way until 1949. When en masse, Operation Red Carpet, en masse, almost the entire community from Yemen arrives in Israel. Ben Gurion and Yitzhak Shamir, Yitzhak Rabin, and Begin, and all the Polish Jews, they go to the airport and they say, welcome, welcome. And these people walk out and they're wearing weird stuff, and their wives are wearing strange things. So, and they say, please meet my wife number 1, my wife number 2, my wife number 3. The rumors, stories go that Ben Gurion fainted. And it tells us the chutzpah, the arrogance of the Ashkenazi Jews who started Israel. They did not even know that there is a whole other world. So that's why you can see until today, there is tensions between Ashkenazim and the Sephardic Jews. We kind of betrayed them for many years. They were primitive in our eyes. We send them to the, over there, to the desert. We put some little huts over there, and until today there is resentment. Menachem Begin changed it, by the way. Those of you who come to the Israeli movie series here, I think last month or 2 months ago, we had an interesting movie where it shows that there is a movement that suddenly Sephardic Jews, Moroccan Jews, Tunisian Jews, Algerian Jews, they feel proud because Begin went to them and said, we respect you, we want you. You're different, you have different foods, different cultures, different music, but we want you. And he changed the revolution, and since then Sephardic Jews feel today into marriage left and right. My close friends have a daughter who married a Sephardic. She's from Kishinev, Ashkenazi, likes gefilte fish, and he never heard about gefilte fish, but they're married and have a beautiful baby, so things are going on. Yes, sir?
Rabbi, were the Jews permitted to have as many wives as they could afford?
Say it again?
Weren't they permitted to have as many wives as they could afford? Only how they can afford a wife.
Yeah, that's obvious. That's obvious. And the same is happening today in Latin America. If you can afford a couple of wives, everybody has another apartment, another child, and so on. Anyway.
1949, I changed my mind.
All right. So, basically, all of these examples are good examples to show you that religion, especially Judaism, is dynamic. It has to change. Who brought it up? Marty said that things are changing. Yes, there is slavery in the Bible. God allows slavery. So guess what? During Civil War in America, there were ministers and even rabbis. I have to be honest. There were rabbis who justified slavery. They said, God allows slavery. Who are we to change it? What I'm trying to show you is that in every religion, We have a fundamental text, a foundational text, but it's not static. We have to change. We have to see. America is not the same today that it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, who could have predicted that we would have now national law marrying gay people?
Yeah.
I tell you, 5 years from now, America is not going to be then than what is it today. There will be all kinds of changes. Look what's going on every day. Changes are happening all the time. The Reform movement just had a major convention in Orlando, and they said Reform synagogues should have 3 kinds of bathrooms: men, women, and others. Who would have ever thought about this? It's not in the Torah. It's not in the Torah. There is a Reform rabbi in Los Angeles. This is bizarre. This is a little bit too much. It's a woman. Well, I'm confused. Her name is Deborah. She tells people, call me Deborah, but I'm a man. I feel like a man. She has not done an operation. She's Deborah, but she insists on going to the male bathroom. So, she's a rabbi in a shul in Los Angeles. Who would ever dream of that? I mean, it's weird, but you know what? I'm telling you, it's generational. It's generational. My daughter does not understand what the issues are. They don't get it. My daughter told me 2 years ago, we're talking about this, and she says, Papa, what's the big deal? In 5th grade, we had this kid. He's flamboyantly gay. He walks around the corridors and he has makeup. 4th grade or 5th grade. So whatever is perhaps new to us or hard for us on the day growing up with it, it's the same like the technology. The children teach us about technology. Yes, sir?
Rabbi, it seems obvious that if we don't start off with the conclusion that God exists, that it seems to me, especially from what you're talking about today, that the society at the time determined the ethics and morality for themselves, and then they created the concept of God to validate those mores. As society changed, so at the time of the Torah...
Give me an example. What society?
The Hebrew society, they felt at that time an eye for an eye was very valid and logical and rational and reasonable. Sometime later, we said the society had evolved and said, no, that's barbaric. God, because they created it in God's name, their God's name. So then we have the Mishnah and the Gemara, and they say, well, no, we couldn't have meant that based on today's value.
I agree. I have no problem with that. That's what conservative Judaism says. Conservative Judaism believes that Judaism was always conservative. Rabbi Hillel, I'll give you the famous example. The Torah says you may not give a loan to another Jew on interest. You know that Christianity for thousands of years said this is an important law. What is it called? Usury. They said Jews are disgusting because they accept usury. So Christianity looks at the Bible without too many changes. We changed. This is what conservative Judaism believes. So anyway, I'll give you another example. That's even more powerful. Very famous. I give you $1,000. And I say, I cannot charge interest, of course. You're a Jew. But promise me, you'll give it to me, when can you give me the $1,000? Not $1,200, I'm not asking for interest, but today is 2015. Well, I think I promise, by 2018, you get it. December 2018. 2018 comes, I come to you and say, where's my $1,000? I'm sorry, it's been a terrible year. 2019, 2020, and so on. The Torah says, after 6 years, what do? It's called sabbatical. You forgive all debts. Everything goes back to zero. So it's a beautiful law. Meaning what? The guy is just not lucky. He bought the wrong piece of real estate. He bought the wrong piece of land. The rain has not been coming 3 years in a row. What do? Poor guy. Forgive him. It's a beautiful law. But listen, like many laws, there are side effects that are worse than the law. Right? The medications. Wonderful idea. We'll solve this problem. Suddenly we find out that thousands of people are dying from that drug. Different side effect. This is the issue. Rabbi Hillel, who lived around the same time as Jesus, he looks around and he says, wait a minute, something weird is happening here. People are giving loans and so on, and they say, you know what, I don't think he will give it back to me, because we count, the entire country counts. So let's say it begins on 2010, we started counting. So 6 years only. So in 2017, all gifts have to be forgiven. Now it's 2015, right? You come to me for a loan, I'm not stupid. I say, if I give her $10,000 and another year she does not give me, January 1, 2017, I have to forgive her. I'm sorry, I cannot afford it. Do you understand? Yes. People began to stop giving loans to each other. Friends would not give loans to each other because they said, oh, he's going to abuse this law. He knows that another 3 years I have to forgive him. So unless I have 6 years, maybe I'll give you. But if it's 5th year, forget it. You understand? So Hillel stands up and creates a concept. He says, okay, I understand. We will change. The law says that you have to forgive Moshe. But it doesn't say that you have to forgive the third party. So, you want $10,000? I'll give it to him. He becomes the banker. You go to him and get the $10,000. I have the right to demand, and so on. So what I'm saying to you is, yes, we go like this, but we don't just drop everything. So this is conservative movement. The conservative movement looks at the laws and says, women were not allowed to be rabbis? Who says so? Let's look into the Torah. Let's look into the Mishnah. Let's look into the Talmud. Let's look at it. Is there a prohibition for women to stand up and to give a sermon? No. So they began to change. Now, that's one way to do it. Now let's take Reform movement. Reform movement, at the end of 19th century, in the middle of 19th century, comes to the stage, and they say, yeah, there are laws of kashrut. You know, certain things are not permitted to the Jews. What is this? Well, maybe in those days the pigs were, sick, trichinosis and all these issues. They didn't really care much why it was. They just say, it's not necessary. Done. So kashrut was dropped. And I think you remember about last year, 2 years ago, I told you the story of the conservative movement. How did we come to the picture? How did we come to the stage? The famous banquet. We have people from Cincinnati here. So it was a very famous banquet. It's called the Trafer Banquet. The first time America created rabbis. There were 5 of them. In Cincinnati, HUC, Hebrew Union College. They were so proud because until then, we always brought rabbis. You all remember that film. What's the famous film? A yeshiva boy arrives from Poland and he has to take, what is that film? No. Is it what it's called? San Francisco Kid? With what are the actors, the famous actors? Yes. It's Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is the goy, right? And how they're crossing the country and so on. Those of you who have not seen it, it's hilarious. It's a very, very funny film. It's about a Polish boy. San Francisco congregation is looking for a rabbi. They write a letter to Poland, and they basically choose a loser, kind of like the guy who's not going to Shlimazel. They say, you go to America. He arrives in America, and Harrison Ford is hired to take him all the way to San Francisco. The rest of the story is about that trip. It's hilarious. I promise you will love this. It's San Francisco Kid. Oh, Frisco, that's it. Frisco Kid. I think Harrison Ford becomes famous because of this. It's a funny movie. Anyway, so America finally has rabbinical school, they create rabbis, and they want to have an amazing celebration. And they come to New York, I think it was Plaza Hotel, I'm not sure, fancy hotel, and they bring the major givers, the major Jewish leaders in America from all over. You name it, all the famous names. And so they bring them to this fancy reception, and these Jews walk in, and they look at the menu, and there is cocktails, and they're passing around, and they look and they say, what is this? This is frogs. What is this? This is crab. And what is this? This is shrimp. Half of the banquet group gets up and says, that's not what we want. We want to reform Judaism, but not this way. They walk out. And 2 days later, Jacob Schiff has a meeting in New York for the major leaders of Jewish community, and he says, we're going to conserve Judaism. That's where conservative Judaism comes. We're not conserving it from orthodoxy. We're conserving it from reform, which went too far to the extreme. But I have to be careful here. Reform movement also is not the same what it was 100 years ago. It has changed dramatically. Most Reform rabbis keep kosher. The Reform movement stood up and said Shabbat is Shabbat about 25 years ago. One of their great leaders stood up, I think it was Rabbi Joffe, stood up and said, just because we don't believe like Orthodox believe, this does not mean you go shopping on Shabbat. So that's Reform movement. So people who used to say, oh, I'm Reform, I don't have to observe anything, that's a lie. That's an insult to Reform movement. Reform movement has changed dramatically, again, because we are dynamic. We have to adjust. Anyway, ethical monotheism, Christianity is part of it. We may disagree theologically, we may disagree on many issues, but basically it's called Judeo-Christian values, Judeo-Christian philosophy, and that's the beginning of America, that's the beginning of Western civilization, and that's what we're fighting for. Okay, I want us to begin the topic that I wanted to we will take 2 sessions for this because it's the toughest issue. It's called, what did I say last week? It's a very important word. Theodicy. We spoke 2 weeks ago about justice. Is there such a thing as justice? What kind of justice were we talking about? Human justice. Are the laws fair? Is there such a thing that everybody gets what they deserve in human society? And what did we say? It's impossible. It's impossible. Theodicy is the next level. Okay. So you cannot create fairness and justice by human means, but what about God? Is God fair? That's the question. And theodicy is the most difficult question for any religion. Any religion. Everybody has struggled. I will give you the list. It started with the founders of Christianity. It went all the way to Elie Wiesel and so on. Especially after the Holocaust, people ask the famous question: what the question is? Where was God? So, just to summarize what theodicy is, we have 3 assumptions. God is good or benevolent, right? Number 2, God is all powerful. What's the word for that? Omnipotent. number 3. What else is missing?
God is all-knowing.
All-knowing. What's the word for that?
Omniscient.
Omniscient. Which means he knows that I'm depressed. He knows that I have cancer. He knows that my wife is dying. He knows everything. He knows that the little chicken over there is about to die. That's omniscient. So if God is all good, if God is all powerful, if God is omniscient, he knows everything, then the question is, how come there is evil? This is called theodicy. Theodicy was created, the word was by Leibniz, a German philosopher, who basically he brought it up. And every theologian, every philosopher has been struggling with this question. And obviously goes all the way back to Ecclesiastes. So let's read the ending of chapter 8, and then we will begin to break it down. Okay. We dealt with verse 11 in chapter 8. You see that one? The fact that the sentence imposed for evil deeds is not executed swiftly, which is why men are emboldened to do evil. Remember we spoke about this. What was it? Justice denied. Justice delayed is justice denied. Remember we spoke about this. If the person is accused of murder, and then 7 years later suddenly there is there was an indictment. People don't even remember who is that guy, what did he do, and so on. The moment you postpone justice, you are hurting the society. Justice is not being served. 12. The fact that a sinner may do evil 100 times and his punishment still be delayed. Now it's interesting. For although I'm aware he's struggling with himself, he says, so there is no justice? He says in Hebrew it's stronger. It's actually, I see that it will be well with those who revere God, since they revere him. He says, despite everything, I believe that those who believe in God will somehow be okay. And it will not be well with a scoundrel, and he will not live long. Well, we can think of a lot of people, Mubarak, Gaddafi, and Hussein, and so on. These are the most powerful people, and then you see, remember, I will never forget that picture of Saddam Hussein sitting in a cave. Remember that? Oh, what a scary picture. They will not live long because he does not revere God. Still, in 14, there is a frustration that occurs in the world. Sometimes an upright man is requited according to the conduct of the scoundrel. And sometimes the scoundrel is requited according to the conduct of the upright. I say all that is frustration. This is a very tough issue. And in Hebrew, we have a short way of putting it. It's, we say like this. Tzaddik, you know what tzaddik is, right? A righteous person. Ve'ra lo. Ra, bad, evil. When bad things happen to good people. So Kushner is also part of this struggle. Rabbi Harold Kushner, probably the most famous rabbi in the world, when he wrote that book, why did it become an international multi bestseller? Because everybody is touched by that question. Because there is nobody, ladies and gentlemen. We may say, oh, look at that guy, he stole so much, and look at him, look at the house he lives in. Don't be fooled by that. There is another line in, we spoke about this, I think chapter 4. Do you know how he sleeps at night? So don't be fooled. Everybody suffers. Not one life can go through without suffering. Suffering is part of life. And Schopenhauer says, you know what, that's the world that he created. We're all suffering. And what was that famous line? Life is misery, and then you die. Something like this. Who was that?
Woody Allen.
Woody Allen stole it from somebody. You suffer and you die. By the way, Woody Allen, in the back of my mind, I think I mentioned a few years ago, I would like to teach one day a course on Woody Allen as a religious thinker. There have been courses at Harvard and UCLA and Berkeley, Woody Allen as a theologian. Because one thing, you can say whatever you want about Woody Allen, but there is not one movie where the word God is not mentioned. And there is not one movie, almost none, where the word death does not happen. Woody Allen is Ecclesiastes. He is very much kind of a skeptical, cynical, he makes fun of it. That's why, he's very gifted. But he says, yeah, they say there is God. I'd like a sign. Why doesn't he send me a sign? Like $2 million in my Swiss account bank. Yeah, the Swiss bank account, right? Tzaddik ve'ra. Why the righteous people suffering? Then there are people who add, you know what? There is another problem. Rasha, evil, ve'tov lo. So there are two problems. How come bad things happen to good people? And how come good things happen to bad people? And there are some people who say the second one is even more terrible than the first one. When people see a nice person, God forbid, lost her child, whatever, it's very sad. But it really upsets people when they say, look at that video, he's evil, I know you. And look how he lives. That even is more upsetting to people than the good people who are suffering. Okay, that's the issue. Anybody wants to try to answer the question? If these three are correct, he loves us, he knows us, he is good, and he is all powerful. He could stop cancer tomorrow. How come it's not happening? Anybody wants to try? Hey?
Well, if we reference the book of Job.
Oh, that's what I want to deal with next week. Don't bring up Job. I want us to go through the book.
Let's bring up the point in Job, which is, I would say, a fourth dimension, which is that we cannot know.
Okay, so now you're jumping, obviously, because I want us to actually go through Job. I suspect most of you have never read the book. And there are some people, Goethe and I think Tolstoy, quite a few people said it's the most important book ever written. The book of Job. I suspect most of you have not read this book, and I have said on many occasions, I will never teach that book. But since we're dealing with these issues, it's important for us to go through that book. I will summarize that book. We will go through the stages. It is a very important book. But Victor Hugo said something interesting. He says, if there is one book that we want to give to our inheritance to the future generations, if I have to choose one book for the future generations, it should be the book of Job. Now, Elie Wiesel says it's the greatest book ever written, and it's the most painful book ever written. You can imagine every survivor has a lot of issues with this. We're not going to go into the book of Job, but I do want to bring up perhaps the issue that is like the elephant in the room, right? I want to talk about very briefly, obviously it's not fair, about the Holocaust. Because very often people do not bring up cancer. They say, how is it possible that if we are the chosen people, if God loves us, how did he allow every third Jew to be murdered in such a horrible way, right? I want to set the tone for next week. There are two kinds of evil. There is natural evil and man-made evil. And we need to separate those two. When it comes to the Holocaust, is it natural or is it man-made? Man-made. When it comes to a baby born with a cancer, is it natural or man-made? That's more natural. We don't know. Maybe one day we'll find out that it's because of the milk that our grandmothers were drinking. Who knows? The fact is, today we know that there are many components, there are many ingredients. Why do we have cancer? But I'm not talking just cancer. A baby is born deformed, God forbid. That's natural. The real problem with theodicy is not the Holocaust, but the natural evil. Why? Because man-made means you and I are responsible. He created us as creatures who have the freedom of choice. This is very important. The baby being born deformed, assuming that his mother never drank and never smoked, and his grandma never drank and never smoked. Now again, there are all kinds of theories about this. There are some people, some philosophers who will say it's bad karma. Maybe, in India especially, in Hinduism, maybe in your previous life, when you were in 16th century, you murdered your neighbor. And that's why your great-great-great-great-grandchild was born with two hands. Or without a brain, whatever. That's one philosophy. But basically, we need to separate. We believe, Judaism believes, that we are born with a freedom of choice. Remember we spoke about this, human nature. We're not wonderful, we're not altruistic, we're not all-giving, but we're not evil either. We're somewhere in between, closer to evil than to kindness and goodness. And the life is basically spent in trying to move from here closer to here, right? Most of us are not Mother Teresa. Most of us do not give up every shirt to say, you know what, there are people right here, 5 blocks away from here, who don't have a shirt. Most of us don't do this. So it's a struggle, right? So every day we wake up in the morning and we make choices. The Holocaust belongs in that category. When a baby is born with horrible disease, or when Job loses 10 of his children, all of his possessions, and suffers horrible disease, this is a problem. And that's what we're going to begin dealing with next week. Because without dealing with Job, without dealing with that theodicy question, you cannot really understand the rest of Ecclesiastes. Because the last chapter of Ecclesiastes is going to put it all together for us. So, is there such a thing as justice? Divine justice? We'll deal with that. Have a good day. Well, we have the Israeli movie. It's going to be